you met already? No?
Hi. How are you?
Nice
Nice
to meet you. Jason?
Hi.
Very nice to meet you.
You have a snowball?
Do you have a snowball?
I do have a snowball, yeah. I love it. It's
You're
a great
quite
night.
the techie guy then.
I am a bit of a geek.
Is that right? Okay, I'm so happy
I was on
to
the
hear that.
internet before there was the web. I used to be on the bulletin board.
Oh, he's old school. I like that.
Old school.
Well, good for you. Well, this is Google Plus, and this is the Hangout. You've probably heard of Google Plus.
I have. I was waiting to be invited in the first tranche of things because it was limited at Google Plus.
Yes.
Wow.
Now
It's not
Wow.
Right.
Oh, this is scary.
You're my man, Jason.
Oh, yeah, we
But
love
100
that.
million registered Google Plusers now.
100 million.
Over.
So I can join now because
Yes,
it was
now you
exclusive.
can. Yes, yes.
I'm in there.
We'll let you in.
Thank you.
I know some people.
Join the
Yeah,
party.
Shaka, where are you?
I know, get on there.
Oh, there's people.
Here in Los Angeles, yes.
Hi.
We're hanging out with Jason Isaacs, a very familiar face.
Hi.
He's on a very popular show called Awake, which we will discuss, by the way, because
I know
I'm
what
very intrigued by the show. But we have all these people hanging out from all over the world. We've got Deano here, who's in Reno.
Hey.
Jeff is up in the Bay Area. We've got Kempton from Canada.
Hi.
Calgary, Kim is Missouri.
Hi.
Hi.
Colorado.
Hi. I wish I could
Hello.
come and actually
I
visit
know,
all these
don't
places.
we
It's
just
very
jump
exotic.
in, right? It's very future. And Stephen is in Waterloo, or in Canada, yes.
Right.
And Trev is up in Yorkshire.
In Yorkshire, in England.
Yes.
Ah, fantastic.
See, this is your hood.
How is it?
No, but-
Canada's my original. My wife's always.
Oh, is that right? Listen, I had no idea, because I've watched you since Brotherhood. That's really where I know you're from. I had no idea that you were from England, and you had this accent.
I don't have any accent. You have an accent. It's very There's an odd thing that happens sometimes in America. I go in, I meet someone, and they go, "You know what's incredible is how you drop your accent." But that verb drop implies that bubbling under my accent, waiting to burst out, is an American accent. And they say, Europeans can drop their accent, so wonderful. As if, but the word drop implies that underneath that silly Swedish and French accent that people are just faking, obviously, is
That's a good point.
Which is not true. I put an American accent on. I change all my vowels. And I
Most
change
people
Never thought
I
about
know
it like
that
that.
do accents like and change interchangeably, like I go back and forth, have a really good ear for music. Are you?
Well, I have a good ear
musician,
for
singer?
accents. Actually, I have that thing. I'm not a very good singer, but I know when I'm off. So it's a talk show. I'd rather I didn't know. I'd rather I could just sing out and be tone deaf. But I know when I miss a note. But the reason I think I can do accents is that in Britain we're fascists about accents, and you can tell where someone, not just where someone's from when they open their mouth, but where they're from socioeconomically and how they hope that you're going to perceive them and where they're from educationally. And so if you're a British actor, you really need to be able to get the accent and the dialect right if you want to play a character.
That's really interesting.
I think. Also, I'm from Liverpool originally.
Yes.
And we moved to London when I was 11, and everybody.
I always think of the Beatles, but
Right. Well, even they had an interesting accent. I used to talk like that when I was a kid, which is a very mild Liverpool accent. In fact, I think I had pronunciation classes when I was at school, to make sure I didn't sound too Liverpool. And we moved to London when I was 11, and all the other kids made fun of me. And the last thing an 11-year-old wants in a new environment is to be made fun of. So I instantly learnt to have a thick Cockney accent, sound like Ray Winston or Bob Hoskins or someone. And then I went to university, and they all sounded like Hugh Grant. And so I learned to sound like them. And so I think it was just about disguising myself and not standing out.
And look at you here now, an American. And listen, we want to talk about Awake because
yes, let's do that.
Fascinating show, and they are. I know a few people in the Hangout here absolutely obsessed with your new show.
Yes.
Yeah. Show rocks, dude.
And down. So
hit me with some questions.
Go ahead. I know that you have a bunch.
Yeah, Jason, I absolutely love the show. I got hooked from the first episode, and it's quite actually, if you think of the philosophy, it's quite Chinese. In Chinese, the dream and reality. I mean, there's a huge, very successful novel got that kind of idea.
Right.
So I want to ask you. I know the story is getting more complex, and episode 2 we've got a big hint drop already. Like, how is the season going to unfold? And I know, I
really want me to tell you? You really want me to
tell you? No.
No spoilers.
No spoilers.
I'll say this: we designed every episode so it's standalone. So you don't ever have to
Oh.
see the rest of it.
Is that right?
So you can watch. But we also made
So
sure
it's not
that
serial
if you watch the
almost?
whole season,
Yes.
pieces of the jigsaw will fall in place. So there is satisfaction for each episode by itself, but there's a season-long conspiracy. And for people who enjoy, I think it's a show that allows you to think and allows you to engage in it. So you can't be watching it and doing the washing up and be on the net at the same time and reading a magazine. You have to engage with it. But there's such a lot of rewards for that. But what my experience of making it, and one of the reasons it was fun to make, is that there's no rules, there's no formula for it, so it never falls back into a pattern from the week before. It's almost like every week is an indie movie by itself, because the writers get in the room and go, now what the hell are we going to do? And they just they wanted to find ways that it was clever and truthful and emotional and thrilling, and even though they had between them thousands of hours of great TV, the main writer wrote 24 and the X-Files and a bunch of other stuff. And our main director directed Friday Night Lights, which was a great emotional show. And many of the other writers had this great history. It was like they'd never worked in storytelling before. And they all said it was like they were suddenly driving a car without a manual. And so what's coming up is, what you would hope, which is every permutation of how to make me unconscious in the sleep. Every permutation of playing with anything that makes me unstable and insecure. And every way of solving crimes in an inventive way. So I'm never quite sure, yes, which world is real, but more importantly, whether I can trust my instincts and why I'm drawn to someone and think that they're the bad guy and someone else isn't. And hopefully there's fun and emotion every week.
We're seeing some head fake already, right? From episode 1 to episode 2, we're kind of expecting something, but it actually didn't happen. But then at the end, that happened, and I've read some review already, and it's actually spoiled me a little. Episode 3 is going to be slightly different from 2. I mean, it doesn't go back to that last bit in episode 3, right? So
well, the conspiracy does come out. The one thing I can tell you about this long arc is that my accident wasn't an accident, and so, or rather, I think, at least in one of the worlds, that it wasn't an accident. I get very paranoid about it being a conspiracy. There's something else going on, which a lot of people have picked up on the internet, which is, in the pilot, I'm in every single scene. And so it's always, this could be a dream, or it might be real. And they decided to do something in the show to make it a bit more intriguing for viewers, which is there are scenes I'm not in. And they have a theory for this, which is that it could still be part of my dream world, and that we all dream lots of stuff we're not in. We only remember the moments that we're in. And that gave them license to tell stories in a slightly more wide-ranging fashion. I can also say this, which is obviously I love making the show, but that's no reason why anyone should watch it. But I promise you that by the time we get to the end, I thought those writers really did some extraordinary work. When they really found their confidence and found where this series could be unique, by the time we get to the end of the show, they were flying. I mean, I get the script and I go, this is not like anything I've ever read. It doesn't in any way resemble any other TV show.
So do they write the first couple scripts and then say, okay, we're going to take it this direction? Is this how it works?
Well, what
or do
happens
they
is
have the whole pilot kind of done, the whole season?
Well,
Did they sit down with you and kind of give you an overview of the whole season, or do you just do your table reads week by week?
Well, I'm a producer on the show, so I got to be in on discussions. But what happens normally is somebody writes a pilot, and if a television network wants to make a series out of it, having made the pilot, they sit down and they go, tell me how you see the season going. And Bob Greenblatt, who runs NBC now, is a really risk-taking, creative guy. He ran Showtime for the last few years and really put it on the map. And he said he made the pilot, he picked it up to series, and he said, now what do you want to do? And we all sat in a room, we went, what it's such a great pilot, and it throws so many balls up in the air. And so we made some rules up for ourselves, which is that nothing could be different prior to the accident. It's what Howard Gordon calls the tree trunk theory. But everything is the same up until the accident, and from then the worlds can diverge, because otherwise it's just, there's too many infinite permutations of possibilities. And so then we worked out what we wanted to do for the first season, and then actually something quite interesting happened, which is that they started to write, you get ahead of yourself, obviously a few weeks, a few episodes ahead of yourself, and a bit like when YouTube is buffering, we caught up. Like, we got to a point about episode 5 where we went to the network and the studio and we went, could we stop for a while, please? And they went, what do you mean stop? There's a giant thing in motion here, hundreds of people and millions of dollars. And we went, well, we just want to make sure the second half of the season is as good as the first half, and that we get it right because we think we're doing something interesting and different here.
Are you doing 22 or 13?
No, we did 13.
13,
The pilot
okay.
plus 12.
Okay.
And we stopped halfway through, and they said, why do you want to stop? And we said, well, full confession, we have nothing left to shoot. And if we wrote next week's episode, we could do it, but it won't be as good as the others because they need to be written and rewritten and checked and make sure we get it right. And they had such faith in us, they allowed us to shut down for a while and
that's
buffer.
fantastic.
Wow.
Okay, let's
I actually have a question.
Related to that, though. That's just slightly related.
Go ahead.
It's a sci-fi show, which I love. It's like I'm big into sci-fi, and this one has a very creative concept. But it's on NBC, and I know there's a new guy there that you said likes to take risks.
Yeah.
But I'm always worried about a sci-fi show on network television, whether or not to really, advise it to my friends or whatnot. Because let's be honest, sci-fi shows get canceled after the first season.
Yeah.
Like
Well, look,
90% of the time.
You're
What
right.
is the likelihood here? What are we looking
Well,
at?
statistically, most shows get cancelled. That's what happens to most shows most of the time.
Yeah.
And so I know there's a number of people, because I read everything online. I read, I don't know how masochistic I am, but I've read all the comments. And I'm interested to see what people think out there. I'm more interested to see what people think creatively and respond, not respond to feedback, but process it. But when people are not watching a show because they're fearful it might be cancelled, in some ways they're defeating their own aspirations, because if you like something, you should watch it. Second guessing what will and won't be popular or cancelled is a fool's game. We're around experts here who are besieged with statistics and they can't do it. At the moment on NBC, we're doing very well for them. The numbers on NBC have not been great this year across the board, but they're rebuilding themselves, and we have been, in that time slot, we've done better than any show has done before, and people are liking us. But if you're thinking, if I'm reading between the lines, you're thinking, I'm not sure we should watch it because it might not still be around. Well, if more people think like that, then of course it definitely won't be around. So I would urge you to go. And also, we're trying to make each episode satisfying in and of itself, with a beginning, middle, and end. And so it's not like watching of the event or 24 or something that you need. You will need, or flash forward. You will need to get the end of to enjoy.
I like flash forward.
Yeah, I know. I love.
By the way, I love all those.
That was my show.
Yeah, I'll have the event.
We've not.
It's actually Flash Forward that made me ask this question in the first place, because I absolutely was crazy about that show.
I love that.
And then it got canceled, and it hurt me so deeply.
I wondered if it was Firefly, because there's so many people that have spent their lives trying to get Firefly back on the air.
That's a dead horse, but Flash Forward.
I know.
A lot of my crew made the event, and Laura Innes, who's in our show, was in the event, and one of the directors worked on it a lot.
I love the
think
event.
one of the things we wanted to make sure was that we didn't build in an absolute necessity to have seen every episode, because if you miss it and they go, well, there's no point watching it, I missed last week. And also, not to make it so that it only really comes together when you watch the last show. That's the point of our show, is the journey. It's not the end. So anyone who thinks the whole season or multiple seasons is all about finding out which world's real, it's not. It's about it's that what if.
It's the
What
X-Files
if I didn't know which world was real? How would I respond emotionally, psychologically? How does it affect his police work? And the journey is really the point of it.
Okay,
I have a quick question, because I'm gonna have to go. No, I have a meeting in 7 minutes, and I've been trying to get in my question.
Sorry, Kim.
I love you as an actor. What you've done has been really great. And okay, I have to admit, I did hate your character in Harry Potter.
My job.
So that means you really did a great job if I hate your characters. But getting to the wake, man, it's blowing my mind. And my question for you, how have you been able to balance out the two different persons that you have to play, in the sense of the character references that you have to do, that you have to make in order to have the right mindset for each character?
Well, the part of the unique concept, I think, of the show is that I'm the same person. I'm the same guy. As far as I'm concerned, it's just the next day I'm waking up. For everyone else around me, they're in two different worlds. But for me, both worlds are the same world. So I wake up from what... I mean, look, it happens to me. If I have some terrible dream in which my wife is behaving terribly, doing something atrocious. I wake up and I go down to the kitchen and I look at her and I judge her quite harshly.
Yeah.
All she's doing is making eggs for the kids, but I'm still responding to stuff she was doing in my head. And I think that's what happens to Michael Britton is that it's all one. It's all one world for him. There is no difference. It's not like he has two different worlds. And so he's aware that his son is not seeing his wife. His two partners are not interacting. The cases aren't interacting. But for him, it's all one. And that's meant to be part of the entertaining maze and journey we take the audience on. So the harder thing for me as the actor is to try and remember what the character knows, because the character will very clearly know which case he was working on. But as an actor, they're often in the same locations, shot out of order. And I go, wait, in this world, my son is alive, right? And I'm looking after the doctor. And whenever we think it's useful for the character to be confused, I do that in character. And I say the wrong thing to my partner. And I go, well, what time did the doctor leave the office? And then he goes, doctor? What are you talking about? We're not looking for a doctor. And along with the audience, I go, oh, wait, no, I'm in the world where we're looking for the clown. Right. So that's how, whenever it's confusing, it's intentionally confusing.
Oh. One last question from somebody.
I'm going to make a statement.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, hey.
Big fan.
Hi. All right.
Shaka's on computer, by the way.
I'm a
Shaka being down so we can see.
Well, there you go. What's up, buddy? I'm right behind Maria.
favorite bad guy.
Thank you.
The Patriot. Man,
yeah.
that dude was despicable.
He wasn't.
He was
yeah.
terrible.
Your ideal dinner party guest, I would say. Yeah.
It was amazing. So.
Well, thank you very much. I'd say what I loved about him and Lucius Malfoy, and I really avoided playing lots of other bad guys when I had the opportunity, is I believed them. And and the same with the guy in Awake. I try and take jobs and tell stories that I believe, and I believe that guy in The Patriot really wanted to win the war.
Right.
And he really wanted to win the war because he couldn't go back to England because he'd lost his inheritance. And it was true. I found out a lot of British soldiers had these maps in their pockets. And when they were fighting battles, they would carve out bits and imagine this life for themselves when they'd conquered the land, where their new estates would be. And people in war dehumanize the enemy. They do. And so I never thought he was kind of twirling some imaginary moustache at the audience. I believed that he would burn those women and children.
Well, and that's why I like the character so much, because the motivations. Like you looked at this character and you knew it wasn't like this stilted, over the top bad guy.
No,
it was like, okay, this is a human being who has these motivations and doing some heinous
things. Listen, I've been lucky enough to have some choice in my career, and I try and choose stories to tell that I think people can imagine themselves being in that situation. That's the whole point of being an actor.
Okay, and last for me, because I have a good. So you obviously do a lot of research on your characters. This one with Awake, what was your research? What did it entail?
Well, I could do the police stuff, so I was
Okay,
the LA homicide department was amazing. They let me go ride along with cops a lot, which is if you ever get a chance to do it, you should go and do it, because believe me, it's nothing like TV. I mean, they types of high adrenaline and terror, stuff that is not, it's extraordinary. But then the other thing is, I'm a father and I'm a husband, and I had to try, I try and go to hell and back, so the audience doesn't have to. I try and imagine. Well, acting is a really easy job. You just have to be the character in the situation. It's just hard to do, and so I just tried to imagine every day having lost my wife or lost my daughters, and what I would do if I had a second chance at having them back again. I mean, our show is not meant to be about loss. In a way, it's meant to be about life. Right. It's meant to be about, okay, he's got a second chance with his wife to make the marriage better. He's got a second chance with his son to be a better father than he could have been. He's got a second chance to be a better policeman. And so, that's my job. I play.
Well,
I play dress up.
It works, Jason. Listen, if you haven't yet, tune in to Awake. It's on NBC.
10 o'clock on Thursday nights?
10 o'clock Thursday night. So tonight.
That would be tonight, in fact.
Yeah.
Stay awake.
Yes.
Thank you guys for hanging out with us.
Thank you. Very good.
Thank you.
Picture.
Yeah.
Nice meeting you, Jason.
Nice to meet you. I look forward to meeting you all in person.
Right.
You got it.
Psychologist.
Yeah.
Come on over.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Psychologist.
Yes, with Trev.
All right, now you have to join Google+.
One out.
Yeah.